If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling confused, drained, or questioning your own reality, you may have just encountered someone with dark triad traits. And if you're the type of person who analyzes interactions afterward, replaying conversations and trying to figure out what felt off, this video is going to give you the clarity you've been searching for. The dark triad isn't some dramatic Hollywood. Villain concept eats a scientifically validated personality framework that describes 3 overlapping patterns of manipulation, exploitation, and emotional callousness. We're talking about narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And here's what most people don't realize. Individuals with these traits are drawn to empathetic, analytical people like magnets, because your very strengths your willingness to see the best in others. Your tendency to give people the benefit of the doubt, your deep thinking nature make you an ideal target. But here's the empowering part. Your analytical mind, the same one that sometimes works against you in social anxiety, is actually your greatest defense against dark triad manipulation. You just need to know what to look for. Today I'm going to teach you the specific behavioral cues, verbal patterns, and psychological tactics that reveal each dark triad type so you can protect yourself before you get pulled into their web. Let's start with narcissism, because it's the most commonly misunderstood of the 3. True narcissism isn't just someone who takes a lot of selfies or talks about themselves. It's a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, lack of empathy, and an insatiable need for admiration that drives their every interaction. The first cue is what I call conversational hijacking. Pay attention to how they respond when you share something personal or important. A healthy person will ask follow-up questions, show genuine interest, or relate with their own similar experience. A narcissist will either immediately redirect the conversation back to themselves, or they'll one-up your experience with something bigger, better, or more dramatic from their own life. They can't tolerate not being the center of attention, even for a few minutes. Watch for grandiose inconsistencies in their stories. Narcissists have an inflated sense of their own importance, so they'll casually mention their close relationship with important people, their expertise in fields they've barely touched, or their almost achievements that sound impressive but fall apart under gentle questioning. They're not necessarily lying outright. They genuinely believe their own inflated version of reality. The third narcissistic cue is empathy switching. They can appear incredibly empathetic and understanding when it serves them, particularly in the beginning of relationships. But watch what happens when you need genuine support during a difficult time, or when helping you offers them no benefit. Their empathy disappears completely, and they may even become annoyed or dismissive of your needs. Now let's talk about Machiavellianism, named after the political philosopher who wrote about using manipulation and deception to gain power. Machiavellians are the strategic manipulators of the dark triad. They're calculating, charming, and incredibly skilled at reading people, but they use that skill to exploit, not to connect. The first Machiavellian cue is information harvesting. They ask probing personal questions that feel like genuine interest, but pay attention to the pattern. They're collecting data about your insecurities, your relationships, your financial situation, your fears, and your desires. They file this information away and use it later to manipulate your decisions or emotions. A healthy person asks personal questions to understand and connect with you. A Machiavellian asks personal questions to gain leverage over you. Watch for strategic alliance building. Machiavellians are masters at creating the impression that you're special to them, that you're on the same team against everyone else. They'll share secrets about other people, speak negatively about mutual friends or colleagues, or create an us versus them dynamic. This isn't genuine bonding. It's a calculated move to isolate you from your support network and make you dependent on their version of reality. The third cue is conditional loyalty. Their support, friendship, or romantic interest is always contingent on what you can do for them. When you're useful, when you have connections they need, skills they want to exploit, or resources they can access through youth, they're incredibly attentive and supportive. The moment you can't provide value, or worse, when supporting you might cost them something, they disappear or become subtly hostile. Psychopathy is perhaps the most chilling of the dark triad traits because psychopaths can be incredibly charming and likable, while being completely devoid of genuine empathy or conscience. They're not the violent criminals you see in movies most. Psychopaths are high-functioning individuals who move through society causing emotional and psychological damage without ever breaking a law. The first psychopathic cue is emotional mimicry without depth. They've learned to imitate emotional responses perfectly, but if you pay close attention, their emotions don't quite match the situation. Their facial expressions might be slightly too intense or too brief. Their tone of voice doesn't align with their words. It's like watching a skilled actor who's memorized the script but doesn't understand the character's motivations. Look for casual cruelty disguised as honesty or humor. Psychopaths enjoy causing discomfort or pain, but they're too smart to do it, obviously. Instead, they'll make cutting remarks disguised as jokes. Share embarrassing information about you under the guise of funny stories, or bring up your failures and insecurities at perfectly timed moments to maximize damage. When you react, they'll act surprised and claim they were just being honest or just joking around. The third cue is selective rule-breaking. Psychopaths have no internal moral compass, but they understand social and legal consequences perfectly. They'll break rules, betray trust, or violate boundaries whenever they believe they can get away with it. But they're incredibly skilled at maintaining plausible deniability. They'll exploit loopholes, manipulate systems, and find ways to harm others, while technically staying within acceptable bounds. Now, here's where your analytical nature becomes invaluable. Dark Triad individuals reveal themselves through patterns, not single incidents. Anyone can have a bad day, be self-centered occasionally, or make a manipulative comment, but Dark Triad traits are consistent across time and situations. Pay attention to how they treat people who can't benefit them. How do they speak to servers, cleaning staff, or subordinates? How do they talk about ex-partners, former friends, or people who are no longer in their lives? Dark Triad individuals show their true nature when they believe there are no consequences for their behavior. Watch their reaction to boundaries. When you say no to something, set a limit, or express discomfort with their behavior, how do they respond? Healthy people might be disappointed, but they respect boundaries. Dark Triad individuals see boundaries as challenges to overcome. They'll argue, guilt trip, manipulate, or escalate until you give in. Notice the cycle of idealization and devaluation. Dark Triad individuals, particularly narcissists, will put you on a pedestal. Initially you're amazing, special, perfect, but inevitably you'll fail to live up to their unrealistic expectations, and suddenly you're disappointing, ungrateful, or problematic. This isn't about your actual behavior changing, it's about their psychological need to maintain superiority. Here's a crucial point for anxious, analytical minds. Dark Triad individuals are particularly dangerous to you because they exploit your tendency to rationalize their behavior. When someone treats you poorly, your natural response is to try to understand why. Maybe they're stressed, maybe they had a difficult childhood, maybe they're just having a hard time. This compassionate analysis is a beautiful quality, but Dark Triad individuals use it against you. They'll provide just enough explanation, just enough vulnerability, just enough glimpses of goodness to keep you analyzing instead of acting on your instincts. Your gut tells you something is wrong, but your mind keeps searching for reasonable explanations for unreasonable behavior. The antidote is learning to trust your emotional responses as data, not just your analytical conclusions. If you consistently feel drained, confused, or diminished after spending time with someone, that's valuable information, regardless of how charming or reasonable they seem on the surface. Here's your action plan. Start documenting patterns instead of analyzing individual incidents. When someone makes you feel uncomfortable, don't immediately search for justifications. Instead, ask yourself, is this part of a pattern? Keep a simple note on your phone about interactions that leave you feeling off balance. Over time, patterns will emerge that your conscious mind might miss. Practice the boundary test. Set a small, reasonable boundary with people in your life and observe their response. It could be as simple as saying you can't talk right now because you're busy, or declining an invitation you don't want to accept. Healthy people will respect your boundary. Dark Triad individuals will push back, argue, guilt trip, or find ways around your clearly stated limit. Trust your energy levels. Dark Triad individuals are emotional vampires. They leave you feeling drained because they're taking energy without giving any genuine energy back. If you consistently feel exhausted after spending time with someone, even when the conversation seemed pleasant, pay attention to that signal. The most important thing to understand is that you cannot change, fix, or save someone with dark triad traits. Your empathy, understanding, and analytical nature might make you believe you can reach their humanity or help them grow. But these personality patterns are deeply ingrained and resistant to change. Your role is not to diagnose or treat them, it's to recognize the patterns and protect yourself accordingly. Remember, spotting dark triad traits isn't about becoming paranoid or suspicious of everyone. The vast majority of people are not dark triad personalities. This is about developing the skills to recognize the small percentage of individuals who will exploit your good nature if you let them. Your analytical mind is your superpower. Here's it to observe patterns, trust your gut instincts, and maintain healthy boundaries with people who demonstrate these concerning traits. You don't owe anyone access to your energy, your resources, or your emotional well-being, regardless of how charming, successful, or persuasive they might be. Trust your observations, document the patterns. Never apologize for protecting yourself from people who see your empathy as weakness instead of strength.